Welcome into another edition of No Holds Barred here at the Toronto Sun. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Postmedia wrestling writer Jan Murphy. Today, we are joined by one half of the greatest tag teams of all time in the Dudley Boyz. He is a WWE Hall of Famer, multiple-time tag team champion. Now you can find him on his awesome YouTube channel, putting out some great content. It is Devon Dudley. Devon, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We spoke to Ken Shamrock a couple of weeks ago, and from the sounds of it, he is as busy as ever. I'm curious for yourself, how are you finding the post-career career?
Well, never thought I'd be busy like this. At first, when I left WWE as the talent, but then worked behind the scenes as a producer, things got a little crazy because, again, a producer has to spare more of their time with the company just now that you're kind of like management. And I found myself really, really getting involved heavily behind the scenes. Then once I left in, it was kind of like, okay, it's cool. I got a little break, but no break. I have a cigar line that's coming out. I have a detailing business in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I also have a wrestling school in Winter Park, which is 3 minutes away from the Performance Center. So, we're teaching students the right way of doing things, getting them in, getting them out, and flushing them all down the hunter over there, Sean.
We were talking before we started this recording. It was a long, long time ago. I spoke to you in Toronto. Take us way back. Do you remember the first time that you met Bully?
Yes, it was the ECW school in Long Island, New York, and he was in a corner somewhere. Not the bully that you see now, the in your face, F you type of guy. He was quiet, he was humble. I tease him about it all the time. I'm like, what happened to you? He goes, Taz and Perry Saturn. But he basically was as humble can be. I swear he was like facing the wall and then turn around and go, how you doing? I'm Bubba Ray Dudley. I was like, oh, okay, how you doing, Bubba? Devon. And that's how we met. I mean, it was at the ECW school training facility. Uh, he was working on his stuff, and I came in to do a tryout with Perry Saturn, thanks to Johnny Rods, who was my trainer, Taz's trainer, Big Dick Dudley's trainer, Hugh Morris's trainer, also helped Special Delivery Jones and Roddy Piper.
Wow.
Wow. And do you remember the first match that you guys ever had as a tag team? That's another one I was curious.
Yes, I do actually. Queens Lost Battalion Hall, April 13th, 1997.
Wow.
I beat the hell out of Little Guido and JT Smith, and I came in swinging a chair. And I told Paul Heyman, I said, I don't know how to swing a chair. I've never swung a chair before in my life. And at that point, really nobody really had because ECW wasn't ECW by the time I got there. Of course, it grew to be what we know as ECW, but it wasn't at that particular point where everybody was using chairs and tables. He said to me, he goes, Devon, you have to go in there and you have to swing this chair because if you don't, I will not be able to use you. It'll be 6 months to a year before I even give you another chance. So he was like, just aim for the top of the head. I said, okay. And poor Guido and JT Smith. Every time I see little Guido and JT, I tell them, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I said, I didn't really mean to hit you that hard. I said, Paulie made me do it. They said, Devon, stop apologizing. It was like almost 20 something years ago. I was like, I know, but I still feel bad. JT Smith couldn't move his head. His wife was really upset and wanted him to quit the business, which after that match, he did. Um,
Wow.
and little Guido still sat down and ate broke bread with me and we went to the gym together. I said, damn, you must really like me. He goes, yeah, you're not a bad guy, Devon.
Wow, that's a great story. Look, I'm glad you brought up Paul Heyman because you think about just where things have gone over his career and how he's evolved and where he is now with this current storyline with, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins, of course. What do you think of just him and the career that he's had dating back to when you knew him, with the ECW to what he's doing right now?
I didn't know him in WCW, but we all knew him who knew him by watching the show. He was a genius then. He became a bigger genius in ECW. And by the time he got to the WWE, he was beyond a genius. In my opinion, he might have been one notch up over Vince, especially when it came to creative. And I say that because I felt that Paul was definitely in tune with the times. The WWE storylines always came from what was going on in the world at that particular point in time. And that's how they got a lot of their stories. So I felt Paul was always in touch with the way things were changing and coming about, which is why ECW was so popular. He knew the change was about to come, and he added his 2 cents into it, and ECW exploded. Vince always, to me, I felt like he was stuck in that 80s type of era, the early 90s of the WWE. He never evolved with the times. Things change. And he was the first one to ever tell you have to evolve with the times, but it just seemed like he didn't. And I don't mean that in a bad way. What I'm, trying to say is that storyline seemed a little stale. You were hoping that he would get with the times, but he's almost 80 years old. So how much more can he get when it came with getting with the times? And Paul just had that youngness about him. He was able to connect with young people. Even though Paul is 50 something years old now, he's still able to do that. That's one of the things that, I think works for Paul, because he still has what it takes to be able to take a storyline of today and make it interesting and captivate people's attention. If you don't think by any chance that he doesn't have anything to do with a lot of that stuff that's going on right now with the bloodline and all that, you're crazy. Especially if he's involved in it. You better believe he's got his 2 cents and his hands into it. And I mean, again, it's doing so good that it's been doing good for a while, So my hat goes off to Paul Lee for being in tune for so long with this wrestling business, making it work. And again, I'm not saying anything bad about Vince or his way of thinking. It's just that sometimes you have to evolve around the times, just like back in the Iron Sheik days, with the Hogan and Andre era, when the Ayatollah of Iran during that time um, was waging war on America and things like that. And what did they do? They made the Iron Sheik the number one villain at that time. And it worked. He was the most hated person walking the face of the earth at that time. Vince knew back then, along with Pat Patterson, because you better believe Pat helped him, and so many other people that were, legends at that time, was in Vince's ear and helping him out with storylines and things like that. And I just felt when this new era came, the era that we're in now, I just felt like he didn't have that backup like he did back in the Hogan and Andre era, or even the Attitude era. I just felt like, he didn't have that. And I think Vince felt that too. And I think that's why some of the storylines when I was producing from 2015 up until the time where he left just didn't register with a lot of people.
Devon, you talk about eras. An era that comes to my mind is the Attitude Era. We talked a little bit about that. At that time, no matter what you and Bubba did in your career, that was the biggest time of your career. And it was working with Edge and Christian and the Hardy Boys in those ladder matches, those TLC matches that are now the stuff of absolute legend. Take us back to that. Was there one team that was pushing the boundaries more than the others, or sort of leading that, that series of matches that you guys and that rivalry?
No, we all were on the same page. We were just trying to get our feet wet in a company that didn't really recognize tag team wrestling anymore. You know, um, we were trying to earn our spot, earn our keep, and we all knew that. So not one team thought that they were better than the other. We all thought we were on the same level until we got to that top level. And then we realized that we had finally, arrived. I also feel that, with the competition that was out there against us in terms of the people within the company during that time, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Mick Foley, The Big Show, all of these names that were being pushed and they were single stars. We were tag team. WWE never really, really put their stamp of approval of pushing tag teams like that. we kind of forced them to do it because of how we all clicked together, how we made history even before TLC matches.
So you obviously talked about the relationship that you had with those guys, the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, in the ring, and you see what they're doing right now. Still, at this age, Devon, they're guys that obviously have nothing left to prove. They are legends in the industry. But are you surprised at all that Matt and Jeff and Edge and Christian are still wrestling to this day?
I think I'm more surprised about Matt and Jeff because, especially Jeff, because of all the crazy
Yeah.
things that that man has done. And I've seen him take some bumps that would just kill me inside. He's like Jason and Michael Myers. You knock him down, he just keeps getting back up. You know, I tease Jeff all the time. I go, I'm never getting back in the ring with you again. I go, you hurt me. And he laughs, I laugh, but we had so much fun together. Um, Now I know what the old time is. Back when I was a young boy in the business, they used to say, Devon, don't blink, enjoy what's going on now, because before you know it, it'll be over. And they were right. You know, my regrets was never taking the chance to settle down and just take it all in, because we were always going. It was a constant grind. We were constantly going. I never took the time to just relax, look around and go, wow, look at this. That was one of my biggest regrets in my career because again, everybody was just going. It was such at a pace. You had to keep up with it. And if you didn't, you got lost. So, working with those guys, I had so much respect and just it was an honor to be in there with them. How they're still going now is beyond me. When Edge hurt himself in AEW, I called him. I said, "What are you thinking?" He goes, "I'm not." I go, "Dude, we're not 25 anymore." I said, "Even if we're 25, we can't land on our legs like that, jump from the top of the cage and land on our feet." I said, "Even when we were 20, you don't do that." And he was like, "Yeah, for that moment of clarity, I thought I was invincible. I thought I was back in my, early 20s." I said, "Edge, even in your early 20s, you couldn't do that." I was like, let alone you're 50. I'm like, things are just going to snap now. Never mind, trying to hold up. And we laughed about that. But, you know, I was bothered and taken back because when Bubba left the company, I wanted to stay and wrestle. And Vince wouldn't allow me to because he wanted the team. And I remember expressing myself to Hunter and saying, put me with some of the young guys like Apollo, at that time, or whoever was having problems getting over, let me help them. And he was like, yeah, Devon. He's like, I would love to do that, but the old man just won't do it. And I didn't hold a grudge, but I was very bitter, for some time. And I really resented doing the producer's role because I wasn't ready for it yet. I still felt like I had something left in the tank where I could have helped out somebody. Not trying to be world's champion or anything like that, but just still go in there and do my crap because I had some stuff still left in the tank. So there was for some time I was a little bitter about that, about Vince forcing me to, stay on the shelf and not be able to wrestle. But again, I could have easily left and went someplace else. But where was I going to go? There was TNA had almost 2 feet in the grave at that time. They almost shut their doors. There was no AEW. There was no other organization that I could have joined that would have allowed me to have um, I'm not saying the success, but to be able to be on a level that I should have been on. There was no other organization. I didn't want to go to Japan, so I felt like I was stuck in the WWE. And I felt like some good years were taken away from me because they made me a producer and they, took me out of the ring and didn't want me to wrestle because I wasn't with Bubba and this and that. And I felt bitter about that for a long time. And I got over it, but then the back surgery came and then the stroke happened. So it was like one, knock after the other. And, I felt not betrayed, but I felt hurt in a sense that, you didn't even let me help out some of the younger guys. Wasn't asking to be world champion, wasn't asking to have anything, just to go out there and to still perform on the level that I knew I could do. So for that to be taken away from me really bothered me for a long time.
Devon, last one from me. That ECW time, as you mentioned earlier, has become the stuff of lore and legend. Very small family of people who did big things that eventually proved to change the industry. One of those people, Sabu, recently passed away. You want to give us your thoughts on Sabu and the legacy that he leaves behind?
Sabu was an interesting person. He was the true innovator of the tables. I think Bubba said it best. We didn't invent the tables, we just made it fun. We made it entertaining. We did exactly what Vince McMahon always said. We entertained, and we did that with the tables. Sabu was the originator. He was the man. Very nice guy. If he liked you, then he loved you. But if he didn't like you and you were in the ring with him, you would feel every bit of what he was doing in that ring. He would say sorry later, but you would feel it. Luckily, he liked me, so I never had an issue with Sabu. Um, he's gonna be he's gonna be very well missed. It was a shock to me when I found out that he had passed, because I thought Sabu would be one of those guys that would be the last man standing, out of all of us. So when I heard about his passing, I was shocked. I immediately reached out to Rob Van Dam. I didn't call him, I texted him. And I told him, I said, I know you're getting bombarded with phone calls. I said, I just calling to make sure that you're okay. I heard what happened. And, if you need me for anything, call me. It's sad that, when someone passes is when we realize, you know, how close we were or we could be with each other. And, now I make it an effort to text Rob on a regular basis or text whoever on a regular basis, not just when someone passes. I try to make sure of that because, again, no one's promised tomorrow. And if that's the case, then try to be with them and talk to them as much as you possibly can. Because if you don't, you'll regret it.
No, that's definitely great advice. Last one for me as well. Devon, you mentioned about, leaving something in the tank. And I think what I love about the wrestling industry, sometimes you just don't know when that big break or that big momentum is going to happen for you. And I think we're seeing that right now with Ron Kellings, R-Truth, and the storyline that's revolving around him right now. I'm curious, he's a guy that you obviously cross paths with throughout the years. What do you make of what's
Mhm.
happening with him right now in WWE?
I love it. I think it's his just due. He's been entertaining people for years. Whether it was comedy or just straight up being in the ring and doing what he does best. I think it's great. It's an opportunity for people to see another side of truth and for people to understand truth and not just the comical side, but the realism of what our truth is all about. I know truth personally, and I know what he can do, and I know his ideas and things that he says. So to me, it was no surprise that he had a great match on Saturday night's main event with John Cena. But it shocked me when I heard that he got let go. Could not understand it for the life of me. Um, at first, I thought it was a work, and then I come to realize that it wasn't. And I'm like, well, what the hell happened for them to do that? Especially after the match that he had at Saturday night's main event with John Cena. That I didn't understand. I didn't get. It's one thing if the person is not producing what they're supposed to be producing as talent, but when you are and you're entertaining people, how the hell do you let something like that go? So I think that's just some of the growing pains that's happening on WWE's part. Thank God the fans made their voices known and went out there and, brought our truth back. That's basically what really happened.
Yeah, really is amazing to watch, and I think we're all excited to see where it's going to go. Devon, I really appreciate the time today. For fans that are interested in what's finding out to find out what's going on with you, where can they go?
They can go to my Instagram at Testify Devon, or Twitter at Testify Devon. I look at all my messages, so send me messages. I'll answer as much as I can. Also, my YouTube channel, Devon Dudley. We've got some exciting people coming up. We have Mick Foley coming up. We're working on Jacob Fatu coming on, and we're also working on Joe Henry. So check us out and keep subscribing and liking and leaving your comments below. And let me know what you think.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Devon. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.